The clinking of crystal and silver at the high-end downtown restaurant felt like a mockery. Across the table, my daughter-in-law, Jessica, dabbed her lips with a silk napkin, tossed her blonde hair over her shoulder, and laughed a sharp, patronizing laugh. "Honestly, Martha, at your age, memory lapses are completely normal," Jessica said, loud enough for the couple at the neighboring table to hear. "Misplacing $286,000 from your retirement trust. That's not a small oversight, that's dementia territory. Good thing Eric and I stepped in to manage your accounts before you accidentally gave it all away to a telephone scammer." My son, Eric, sat right beside her, staring intently into his water glass, too cowardly to look me in the eye. They thought they had won. They thought that because I was 64, quiet and grieving the loss of my husband, I would simply roll over and let them steal my life savings to fund their luxury lifestyle. They had no idea that I hadn't forgotten a single penny. And they had no idea who was sitting at the private corner booth directly behind them. To understand the sweet justice of what was about to unfold, you need to know who we were dealing with. Martha Vance, me, a retired forensic accountant who spent 35 years auditing corporate fraud for the federal government. I didn't lose $286,000 to bad memory. I set a sophisticated financial trap, and they walked right into it. Jessica Vance, a ruthless, status-obsessed corporate climber who worked as a senior marketing director at Apex Global Media. She spent years treating me like an senile old burden, while embezzling my funds to pay for her luxury designer wardrobe and country club dues. Eric Vance, my spineless son, who chose his manipulative wife's affection over his own mother. Eric Vance's safety net behind my back. Wait. Before we reveal how Jessica's CEO overhears her admissions of financial theft, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a plot twist. "Jessica, dear, let's not discuss my cognitive health over appetizers," I said smoothly, keeping my voice entirely even. "Let's talk about the wire transfer from my Vanguard account dated March 14th. The one addressed to Apex Global Media's corporate expansion fund, with your personal signature as the authorized beneficiary." Jessica's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered, sneering. "Oh please, you signed that authorization form yourself during our Sunday brunch, Martha. You told me it was an investment in my career. See, this is what I mean. You sign things and then completely blank out 2 weeks later." Eric finally piped up, his voice weak and defensive. "Mom, stop making a scene. Jessica is doing us a favor by keeping track of your finances. You should be thanking her, not accusing her of stealing." I looked at Eric with a gaze so cold it made him swallow hard. "I never signed an investment agreement, Eric, and as a retired forensic accountant, I know the exact difference between a valid signature and a clumsy digital forgery." Jessica slammed her fork down onto the plate, her face flushing with furious entitlement. "Are you calling me a forger, you ungrateful old witch? If it weren't for me, you'd be sitting alone in that drafty house rotting away. That money is gone. It's invested in my corporate division, and you couldn't prove a damn thing because legally, your name is on the paperwork." She thought she was whispering, but the restaurant had suddenly gone dead silent. And right at that exact moment, a tall, impeccably dressed man in a bespoke charcoal suit stood up from the private booth directly behind Jessica's chair. The man stepped out from the shadows of the corner booth. His face was thunderous, his eyes locked entirely on Jessica. It was Richard Sterling, the billionaire CEO of Apex Global Media, and Jessica's ultimate untouchable boss. Jessica froze, color instantly draining from her face until she looked like a ghost. Richard Sterling, a man of absolute corporate integrity, who despised white-collar crime, embezzlement, and any behavior that dragged his multi-million-dollar company's name through the mud. If you are loving this instant karma, drop a comment below with hashtag instant karma, and let's dive into part 2. Mr. Sterling?" Jessica stammered, scrambling up from her chair so fast her napkin fell to the floor. What are you doing here? I thought you were flying to London." Richard Sterling didn't smile. He walked slowly around the table, stopping right beside Jessica, looking down at her with pure disgust. "I changed my flight, Jessica." Richard's deep voice echoed across the quiet restaurant. "And I am exceedingly glad I did. Because for the last 10 minutes, I didn't just hear you admit to gaslighting an elderly woman. I heard you brag about embezzling $286,000, using Apex Global Media as a shell conduit for your fraudulent transactions. Mr. Sterling, please? It's a misunderstanding. She's confused. She's senile. Jessica shrieked, her hands trembling violently as she tried to grab his sleeve. Do not touch me, Richard snapped, stepping back. I heard every word. You used our corporate expansion fund category to launder funds from a private citizen into an unverified personal account. That isn't a family dispute, Jessica. That is federal wire fraud committed under my company's corporate umbrella. Eric stood up, panicking, trying to shield his wife. Sir, please, you don't understand, we're family. I don't care if you're royalty, Richard interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a razor. Jessica Vance, effective immediately. You are terminated from Apex Global Media with cause. Security will be waiting at your office building to escort you from the premises and confiscate your company laptop and keys. Jessica burst into hysterical tears, the high society mask completely shattering. No, you can't do this. My career, my reputation. Your career ended the moment you decided to steal from a woman who clearly knows more about accounting than you ever will, Richard said coldly. Then he turned his attention directly to me, his expression softening into a respectful nod. Mrs. Vance, Richard said politely, I believe your forensic accounting background will find that my corporate legal team will be more than happy to cooperate with local authorities to trace every single cent of that $286,000 back to your bank account by tomorrow morning. The ride home was filled with a suffocating silence. The luxurious apartment Jessica and Eric lived in, funded entirely by borrowed prestige and my stolen money, was about to be repossessed by the bank. The queen of corporate manipulation had been dethroned in less than 60 seconds. Martha, me, sitting comfortably in the passenger seat of my own paid-off car, watching them drown in the mess they created. Before we reveal how Martha handles her cowardly son and gets every last dollar back, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more intense real-life drama. By the time we walked into their apartment, corporate security from Apex Global was already standing outside their door alongside local police officers. Jessica's designer handbags, shoes and jewelry were piled in cheap plastic trash bags in the hallway. The police lights flashed outside the upscale downtown restaurant, casting a harsh pulsing red and blue glow across the glass facade. Inside, the high society illusion that Jessica Vance had spent years carefully constructing shattered into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. She had thought she was untouchable. She had thought that by gaslighting a 64-year-old widow about memory loss, she could quietly pocket $286,000 of hard-earned retirement money to fund her luxury wardrobe and designer lifestyle. Instead, she had walked straight into a forensic trap designed by a master. Character introducing Kant, Martha Vance, me, sitting quietly in the center of the chaos, completely calm, holding the final audit papers that proved every single cent of theft. Richard Sterling, the billionaire CEO who made sure corporate law and local law enforcement moved with maximum speed. If you are loving this satisfying twist of corporate justice and family revenge, hit that like button, drop a comment with justice served, and let's finish this story. Two police officers stepped forward, their heavy boots clicking against the tile floor. One of them held out a pair of steel handcuffs. Jessica Vance, the lead officer announced clearly, his voice echoing through the stunned dining room. You are being placed under arrest on charges of grand larceny, corporate wire fraud, and identity forgery. Jessica let out a blood-curdling scream, thrashing backward until she hit the restaurant's mahogany pillar. No, this is a mistake. My husband is right here, Eric. Tell them. Tell them it's a family misunderstanding. Eric stood paralyzed against the table, his face completely drained of blood. He couldn't look at her. He couldn't look at the police. He couldn't even look at me. He was completely paralyzed by the realization that his entire life had just burnt to the ground. Mr. Vance, the second officer said, turning to Eric. We will also need you down at the precinct for questioning regarding your knowledge of these unauthorized corporate fund transfers. As the officers grabbed Jessica's arms and began hauling her away in handcuffs, her high-end designer coat dragging across the spilled wine on the floor, she twisted her head around, her eyes blazing with pure venomous hatred directed straight at me. You ruined me, she shrieked, tears and mascara streaming down her face. You old witch! You planned this! You planned every single second of it. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply picked up my teacup, took a slow, deliberate sip, and looked her dead in the eye. I didn't plan your greed, Jessica, I said softly, the quiet authority in my voice cutting through her screams. I just audited it. And in accounting, every single penny always has to balance out in the end. Richard Sterling watched her get dragged out the door, then turned back to me, offering a deep, respectful bow of his head. An absolute masterclass, Martha. If you ever want to come out of retirement to audit my corporate division, the job is yours. 3 months later, the $286,000 was safely restored to my retirement account, along with full legal restitution extracted from Jessica and Eric's remaining joint assets. Jessica was facing up to 10 years in federal prison, and Eric was working 2 jobs in a tiny cramped studio apartment, drowning in legal debt. I sat on the sunlit porch of my fully paid-off home, sipping my morning coffee and watching the garden bloom. They thought age meant weakness. They thought silence meant surrender. But wisdom never forgets, and justice always collects. If you loved this intense story of family betrayal and ultimate corporate revenge, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping dramas. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Did Jessica and Eric get what they deserved? See you in the next story. You did this, Jessica screamed, lunging toward me like a wild animal as the police officers stepped in to hold her back. You ruined my life. You planned this whole thing. I didn't plan your greed, Jessica, I said calmly, adjusting my coat. I just made sure you had enough rope to hang yourself. Eric slumped against the apartment wall, burying his face in his hands. Mom, please. Talk to Richard. Talk to the police. Tell them we'll pay it back. With what money, Eric? I asked softly. You lived beyond your means, backing a wife who cared more about status than basic human decency. The bank has already frozen your joint accounts. Every asset tied to that stolen money has been seized as evidence. 3 weeks later, the $286,000 was safely returned to my retirement trust, complete with legal restitution fees paid out of Jessica and Eric's remaining assets. Jessica was facing up to 10 years for corporate wire fraud and embezzlement, and her high society friends had blocked her number across the board. Eric had moved back into a small, cramped studio apartment, forced to work 2 jobs just to pay off his legal debts. I sat on the porch of my peaceful, fully paid-off home, sipping my morning tea as the sun rose over the garden. They thought a 64-year-old widow was an easy target with a failing memory. But wisdom doesn't fade with age. It only sharpens. Greed always thinks it's the smartest person in the room, until justice walks in and sits at the next table. If you loved this epic tale of instant karma, corporate justice, and absolute redemption, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping dramas. Drop your comments below. Did Jessica get what she deserved? See you in the next story.